it's time to blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
This is Defending Utah's Saturday 12 to 2 podcast, where we talk less about news and more about ideas and principles, in an effort to saturate our dear listeners with the ideas of liberty. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
Welcome back to this week's edition of Saturation Saturday, where we saturate you with the principles of liberty. And sometimes, like this week, we're going to saturate you with some of the threats to liberty.
That's right.
And joining me this week, I'm Ben McClintock, and we have Micah Turner, and we have Kevin Paulson.
All right.
And today we're going to be talking about Agenda 21 and Agenda 21, how you implement it in a conservative state like Utah. Isn't that weird? How would we get Agenda 20? This is a United Nations program.
Yeah.
And it's being implemented in a conservative state like Utah?
It's almost like it's really sneaky.
Like,
yeah,
there's no way we would go along with that, right?
It's like you boiled a frog.
Like that. Yeah, except for I'm feeling the heat now, unlike a fully boiled frog. And it's really hot.
So I want to show a brief introduction. If you've never heard of Agenda 21, whatever you think of Glenn Beck, this is a good intro on Agenda 21. Whether you agree with them, you like them, you don't like them, this is still a good intro on what Agenda 21 is.
So what is Agenda 21? Well, it's easy. Agenda 21 is a comprehensive, this according to the United Nations website, a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations system, governments and major groups in every area in which human impacts on the environment. Now, where is that? Every area where humans impact the environment. Answer? Everywhere. In everything. Now, how do they plan on funding such a massive effort? Easy, according to the UN website. Agenda 21 will require a substantial flow of the new and additional financing resources to developing countries in order to cover the incremental cost for the actions they have to undertake to deal with global environmental problems and to accelerate sustainable development. Got it? So it's going to keep growing and growing and growing, and there's going to have to be more and more money from rich countries going to poor countries. We'd be one of those rich countries. Sounds a little like redistribution of wealth, doesn't it? I know, crazy conspiracy talk from the United Nations. The main hook to this program centers around one catchphrase, and it is this: sustainable development. Well, that sounds great. And I want you to know, most of the people in your local areas think that that's fine. And I do too, if it was just that. Hey, we want to be able to sustain development. Yes. However, they don't know what's behind sustainable development. According to the UN website, again, sustainable development, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Well, don't we have to be kind of a prediction king to be able to do that? Let me translate. They want to evaluate and approve and reject anything and everything you do in order to make sure it's for the good of future generations. In other words, it doesn't matter what the individual wants to do as long as it's good for the collective. Hello, 1984. More and absolute control. We have more on what this means coming up, but it includes things like where you can live, what land should be designated for, not by your local community, but by the UN. Here's the Agenda 21 stance on land. The objective, quoting the United Nations, is to provide for the land requirements of human settlement development through environmentally sound physical planning and land use, so as to ensure access to land to all households, and where appropriate, the encouragement of communally and collectively owned and managed land. Particular attention should be paid to the needs of women and indigenous people for economic and cultural reasons. Gang,
Okay, so he lays out a lot there, but that's exactly what Comrade Buskipski wants to push when the UN comes to Utah in August of 2019, is sustainable development. And so we've got to really understand, that's just kind of the overview. And so there's a couple of things. When I first had heard about Agenda 21, it's been around since 1992. There was a Rio de Janeiro summit back in 91, 92, where they had their first meeting. And I didn't hear about Agenda 21 until almost a decade later, about 2000. And there was a guy running for governor. And on his yard signs, it said, "Stop Agenda 21." And I was like, the 21st agenda on some city council agenda? That's kind of random.
Of course.
And then I saw a news report just a few months later about how the city of Santa Cruz had officially signed on to Agenda 21, and they had UN representatives coming in and putting meters on privately owned water wells.
Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Because that's what you do.
I would love to make money by offering nothing except bureaucracy.
And taking away people's rights and controlling their property. And so I'll never forget this. It's like stuck in my brain, and I've almost 20 years later, I still remember what the UN representative said. It says that Americans have given up their rights to private property because of their embrace of gas-guzzling vehicles and urban sprawl. And somebody has to do something about it, she says. Of course, she's the one that's going to be doing something about it.
Yeah, of course.
And so that's kind of my introduction, almost 20 years ago now, of this 30-year-old program, now called Agenda 2030, of their major goals of destroying property rights, of controlling the family, and destroying your ability to decide how big your family is. It affects every aspect of human life. Now, this is especially like in Utah.
And they pretend it's all good stuff.
Well, of course. I mean, who doesn't want to be? Are you against being sustainable?
Well, it depends on who's asking. At this point,
do you want to be unsustainable?
It depends on who's asking. So the United Nations, the answer is yes.
Absolutely.
I am against being sustainable. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
No. And so in a place like Utah, right? Nobody in Utah is going to take away your property rights. Nobody in Utah is going to tell you religious people how many kids you're going to have.
Yeah.
And so Agenda 21 would never happen in Utah.
Yeah, we're never going to tell you that you can only build white vinyl fences on your property or what you can do with that property with your business or whatnot. Of course not. No. We're not going to make you plant trees to open Turner's Auto Repair. Nope, that never happened. Oh, yes, it did.
And so how did they get people to go along with them? This man right here, Carroll Quigley, he was a professor at Georgetown University. Bill Clinton called him his mentor, and he wrote the book Tragedy and Hope, where he studied the papers of the people that want to build a new world order, a socialistic global tyranny. And he said the only thing he disagreed with them about was that they wish to remain a secret. And he explained how they get their job done. He says that the two parties should be almost identical so that the American people can throw the rascals out at any election without leading to any profound or extensive shifts in policy. That was in his book, Tragedy and Hope, which came out in 1966. So basically showing how the Republicans and the Democrats should be identical. And so you switch sides. You go Republican, you go Democrat. It doesn't matter. We get bigger and bigger government because we're thinking that we're switching sides when we're really not.
Ta-da.
And we can see that happening in the national scale as well as the local scale. Well, we've got Republican governors for like 30 years in the state of Utah, where what happens every legislative session? Bigger government, more taxes.
Yes. Looking at the Utah state legislative proposed bills is like just, I mean, I feel like I should go crazy, axe crazy. Axe crazy. Is that what we came up with the term? I should be going axe crazy.
Really crazy, yeah.
Yeah, at the state capitol this legislative session.
Well, I mean, the session hasn't even started. We've got over like 150 bills numbered now. It's insane. It was like 105 2 days ago, and we're like up to like almost 150 now. It's like, it's just ridiculous.
And of course, all these legislators aren't writing these laws.
Right. We've got
probably almost every single bill is not. They don't even.
They've got the government agencies that are making up more rules and more powers for themselves. You've got all these different UNIDROIT and other international organizations trying to get the states to get their laws in league. And you've got Governor Herbert saying he wants to have everybody's BB gun registered. I mean, it's just crazy.
That's important, you know.
Red flag laws that are coming up. And so this is, of course, the two parties are identical for all intents and purposes. And so how do you get a conservative state like Utah to support Agenda 21 programs? You've got the promoters of the agenda that want to get something done, like Agenda 21. And so they're pushing their agenda. We're like, okay, we've got these programs. We're pushing control of private property. We're making it and so people can't own their own property. But we know that there's going to be people that don't like that. And so what are we going to do about that? Well, the smart thing to do is to start our own organization saying we oppose that.
Yeah.
We're going to start a group that says, you know, we're for property rights and against all of this big government. And so all these people that are for property rights and against big government join the group started by the people pushing big government and anti-property rights.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder where that's going to go.
And so exactly what happens. Their goal becomes a reality because everybody spent their time spinning their wheels doing nothing.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of examples of this false opposition. And when we get back from the break, I'm going to play a clip from a video that shows just in news footage that exact scenario playing out. When we get back from this break, this is Ben, Micah, and Kevin for Saturation Saturday, defendingutah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
You will be saturated with freedom.
This Defending Utah broadcast is brought to you in part by K-Talk Radio AM 1640, Black Lotus Web Development, blacklotuswebdev.com, the United States Constitution Made Easy to Understand by Dr. Lonnie Crockett, available at the Defending Utah Liberty Store, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, American Appliance, 801-254-2566, and Anderson Accounting, 801-225-0396. And Dr. Jeremy Thompson Dentistry with Go New Smile, gonewsmile.com, GONUSMILE.com. Welcome back to Defending Utah Saturation Saturday. I'm Ben McClintock with Micah Turner, Kevin Paulson, and we are here to saturate you with the principles of liberty. We've been talking about how in a state like Utah, in a conservative state, people that like like big families, that like property rights and liberty, how can you get something as anti-liberty as Agenda 21 going on here? And if you've got any questions or if you've got any comments, we want to play it in a future broadcast. Leave a message for us at 801-877-3205, 801-877-3205. I am looking forward to playing those messages.
Yes, I hope angry people call.
The angrier, the better.
So a lot of people, I think, when they first hear about the Hegelian dialectic, which is what I've commonly heard this referred to as, is that they think, oh, well, you know, there's all these organizations. How could anybody think to do that? I mean, why would they? It's like this crazy reverse psychology, right? You're going to try to push something in order to not push it. Well, what happens is they compromise. So they're very believable. When it's obvious. I mean, if you really want to accomplish something, how hard is it really to start a group for the opposition? It's really easy.
Right. Especially with the resources that people have.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, it doesn't take much. I mean, all you have to do is you be the voice for your opposition. You know exactly what to say. You know exactly who to say it to. And you just need somebody to trumpet that for you. So once you've got that, you are the Pied Piper for the other side, and you can be as convincing and as knowledgeable. Of course, you know all about the movement, so you handpick the key issues, and then you just compromise for the win in the end. And so that compromise is a win for you. Anyway, it's easy, and it happens all the time.
Yeah, anytime that freedom is engaged in negotiations and compromise, it's always a loss.
Yeah,
because the other side never has.
You can't compromise.
Yeah, everything that evil has is stolen. So there can be no such compromise with them. It's
because all of their compromises are designed to get you moving in their direction, and they're never satisfied.
Yeah.
They'll get you going right now, and then they're like, hey, we're happy now. And then in a few months, they'll just come back and say, no, we need more. And if you don't go along with it, you're the jerk.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I was training somebody at work, I remember telling them little things are big things. It's like sometimes when you first start a job, you think, oh, I have to do these grandiose things that are going to be earth shattering, and it's going to change the way the company runs. But if you can actually change something in a bureaucracy, something small, and make a real change, a little change is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, I mean, they set their sights on small degradations to our liberty that they would be thrilled if they could get it. And they're going to make a big hoopla and say all these awful things that they don't really intend on enacting right away, maybe later. But if they could just get one of those things, then they'd be thrilled.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So before we went to the break, I was talking about this Hegelian dialectic and how it's applied. And there's this from the movie, but from the video Behind the Big News, it talks about this pincer strategy. But in Utah, we have obvious Agenda 21 measures, and then we have false opposition, look like they are opposed to that, like I said before. So here's this video.
Street demonstrators turn the area of the World Trade Organization conference into a war zone. Over 500 National Guardsmen and state police are called in to help restore order in what became known as the Battle of Seattle. The major media focused on the chaos and the mob's demands.
Let them go!
Yet they carefully avoided raising the issue as to how the groups on the street were organized and funded, or whether their leaders might have a hidden agenda. For those who orchestrate these events, it's the illusion that counts.
The familiar media melodrama of the anti-globalization movement that we have seen in Seattle and some of the other protest venues is really a classic example of bracketing an issue with false alternatives, because we're told that these are people who oppose the global agenda. After all, they're called anti-globalization activists. Well, what is it that they oppose? They don't oppose global government. They believe that there is too much free market capitalism in the world, and that government at a global level has to be more assertive in imposing controls over the free exchange of goods and services.
The media further stage manages the illusion of conflict by promoting those designated as the official opposition.
I'm going to focus on what the other side says and then what you say back.
The media-appointed spokesperson for the anti-WTO forces is Lori Wallach. She heads up Global Trade Watch. Ignored by the media is the fact that Wallach's organization receives funding from the Ford Foundation, which is closely tied to the CFR. The friendly relationship between Wallach and the CFR agenda was made clear in Foreign Policy magazine, a major conduit for CFR thinking. This issue signals media leaders that Lori Wallach should be represented as an expert on trade issues. By ensuring that only false opposition is offered to its revolutionary agenda, the CFR internationalists can't lose.
We see that done over and over again, and especially in Utah with the Agenda 21 programs, where you have the people supporting it and then the official opposition.
Yeah.
And anybody that gives a different narrative than those two approved narratives is completely ignored and shut out of the discussion and not given any sense of legitimacy, because of course that would harm their ability to do what their program is. And so this, some people will say that, oh, this is just some kind of a conspiracy theory, right? Have you guys ever heard of people saying that Agenda 21 it's nothing but a conspiracy theory?
I like the name Agenda 21 because it sounds like a ridiculous movie conspiracy. And people are like, that doesn't sound. And I'm like, well, you can buy the book on Amazon.
From the United Nations.
From the United Nations. And they're like, wait, what? Like, yeah, I've looked it up for people like, here you go. Book Agenda 21, published by the United Nations. You can buy it if you want. Or you can tell you about it.
Well, it turns out there are a lot of little councils and organizations that people don't even know about. Mm-hmm. That unless you're on a city council or a community council or a state government officer, you don't even know that there are these councils that are advising the city councils what to do. And for example, in Utah, we have the Wasatch Front Regional Council, mm-hmm. which tells the city councils what to do with the planning of the roads and the zoning. And they literally plan out 20 years in advance, and they have maps and charts, and this road's going to go here and there, and it's all planned out. And these guys follow it to the letter. And
so it's not like the city is deciding to do this; they're being told to by a regional entity.
Of course,
and those regional entities
refuse to follow the regional entity,
but they don't.
But the fact that they don't it should be quite telling.
Yeah, it really
quite
is
telling indeed.
So this is not just some crazy conspiracy theory. You don't get government agencies to go on record on, against something that's not real. And in 2013, the legislature actually passed a resolution, granted, doesn't have teeth, but they went on record as an entire legislature, both the House and the Senate passed this, putting Utah on record opposing Agenda 21.
Probably most of them didn't even read it.
What was interesting of how this got passed was everybody in the legislature was kind of making fun of it, like, why are we wasting our time with this? And then there was a member of the Salt Lake City Council that went to testify against this, saying, oh no, we should be in favor of Agenda 21. It's wonderful. And everybody looked at themselves like, holy cow, never mind. It's important. We need to do something about this.
Who said that we like Agenda 21?
One of the city council members, Salt Lake City Council members.
They just went in and were like,
at the committee hearing when this was being up for a vote in the committee, they're like,
that's beautiful.
And so what this does is it tells all the agencies in the state not to adopt or implement policy recommendations that deliberately or inadvertently infringe on or restrict private property rights. Now, unfortunately, they don't follow this, obviously.
No, they don't care. It's been my experience that the average city worker, which is all of them, spends more time studying their Bible of codes than reading the Constitution.
Right. So it also says that we need to be more informed about the harmful effects of it, as well as making sure that we support local sovereignty. So on that pincer strategy, on this Hegelian dialectic, the organization that's promoting Agenda 21 the most, like the one that's just out there, you look at their website and they've got a program for every Agenda 21 program, is Envision Utah.
Yeah.
They don't come in the state and say, we're Agenda 21 Utah, because that would be too obvious. Yeah. They have organizations that have a local name to implement this international program locally by your local leaders. We don't have the UN invading Utah. We're being turned over to them by our local officials. And so you look up all these Agenda 21 names, Envision Utah has a program for that. And this goes back to the Clinton era, the Clinton administration. We have Clinton's advisor on sustainable development, a guy by the name of J. Gary Lawrence, who explained that participating in a UN advocated planning process would very likely bring out many of the conspiracy fixated groups and individuals in our society. This segment of our society who fear one world government, those crazy wackos that fear one world government.
That fear the exact thing we're doing.
And a UN invasion of the United States through which our individual freedom would be stripped away would actively work to defeat any elected official who joined the conspiracy by undertaking local Agenda 21. So we call our process something else, such as comprehensive planning, growth management, or smart growth. So he's saying, what do? We lie.
Yeah.
We flat out lie.
They have all these buzzwords, sustainable development, housing choice, Envision Utah.
It's envisioning Utah.
Wasatch Front Regional Council.
What's your vision for Utah? How are you envisioning?
I'm envisioning Utah.
I'm gonna slap your envision right upside your head.
So we call our process something else. We're going to lie to you, and so that way you don't oppose our program to destroy individual freedom.
Yeah. Well, when you say stuff like sustainable development,
it's so innocuous. It's what's it called?
So ambiguous.
Ambiguous. It can mean anything you want it to.
Yeah, and it's full of positive words. It's not full of kill babies now. It's not full of take your property and plunder your wallet.
Right.
It's called sustainable development.
What's interesting though is one of the the guy that wrote, one of the co-authors of Agenda 21, Maurice Strong from Canada. He wrote in one of his books about Agenda 21 and sustainable development, what is sustainable development? And he said it was, what's not is air conditioning, meat eating, and modern life. So let's get now, when we get back from the break, we are going to talk about how this is implemented in Utah. He says we call it something else. What are they calling it in Utah? How is it being done? This is Micah, Ben, and Kevin for defendingutah.org on Saturation Saturday. And we'll be right back after this break. Okay, go ahead.
Welcome back to Saturation Saturday. This is Micah, Ben, and Kevin coming back to Saturation Saturday.
Woo-hoo!
And now we're going to carry on where we left off.
So we've been talking about Agenda 21 and how it's implemented in Utah. If you have any questions, comments, we want to hear from you. You can email us at info@defendingutah.org, info@defendingutah.org, or leave a voicemail at 801-877-3205, 801-877-3205, and we will read your email or play your voicemail and answer your question or just take your abuse, whatever it is.
Yeah. If you scream at us, I'm going to laugh. Just like that guy who played Alex Jones for us. That was a good moment.
That was beautiful.
That was hilarious. That was a good joke.
So what I'm thinking, I bet a lot of people are wondering what the motive is of these people that are pushing Agenda 21. Maybe we could talk a little bit about their motives.
Well, I think that because as you understand it more, the more you understand it, the more the motive becomes glaringly obvious of complete and absolute control over every aspect of our life.
Are you sure it's not about unicorns and rainbows?
It's not about their socialist utopia. It's about complete and utter death and destruction of the human race. They have the goals they've set out where you have Jacques Cousteau saying we need to kill hundreds of thousands of people a day. He says it's a horrible thing to say, but it's just as horrible not to say it. So they think what their motivations are.
Yeah. Well, you think about people that have unlimited finances, and you think about in a free market, like let's say Bill Gates wants to buy my house. In a free market, I can tell him, sorry, you can't buy my house. I don't want to sell it to you. No price is high enough. And so there are limitations that I think it just gets under their skin. And I think they say, man, I have all this wealth, but I can't boss people around in a free society. So how do we make it so I can ask for anything? I can get away with murder and whatever, design the laws for myself so that I can basically be a law unto myself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's all I can think of is, I mean, you got these people that think about the banking cartel that runs our finances. Talk about sustainable development. How sustainable is it that we continuously print more money and loan it to ourselves? I guess apparently they've figured out a way to make it sustainable by just simply stealing the wealth of the nation.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's only sustainable because people put up with it. A lot of people know about it, but they don't. What are we to do about it?
Well, that gets back to your motivation of people, individual freedom gets in the way of these people that are used to getting their way. And so what do you do about it? First, you have to understand what's going on. And so people think, and that's what we're trying to really point out here, is that it's not just those wacky leftists that are actively promoting it. But as we are going to be showing is that it's this, if we don't understand this false opposition aspect of it, we're going to be falling after false patriots with false solutions and actually tying our, hanging ourselves, putting the noose around our own necks if we don't understand what's going on.
There's a scripture that says, talking about the adversary, saying with flax and cords, he leadeth them down to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And flax and cords are like really, it's like it's like silk almost. It's like really, really, fine, weak material, but it's like, it seems like nothing. It seems really innocuous when you look at these compromises that these organizations put forward. But when you realize that, hey, you lost another battle, it might be a small one, but these are happening constantly. And it makes me wonder, these bills that they put forward, how many years in advance do they have these stacked up?
Right.
It's like these things are in the queue. And they're just like, yeah, we're going to release this one this year and this one next year and this one next year. And they're working on them. They've got committees full of people planning the stuff years in advance.
Yeah. This isn't happening randomly or by accident, for sure. So in Utah, this is being done. We're being, again, like I said, we're being turned over. We're not being invaded. We're being surrendered over by our own elected officials. And back in 2012, the Brookings Institute wrote an article about how Utah is leading the way in implementing Agenda 21. Regionalism is a key aspect of Agenda 21. And they were praising how Envision Utah was leading the way. It says that Utah has become the unlikely leader in regional planning. How is this conservative place leading the way in implementing this crazy, radical, extreme agenda against family and country? It says the organization has emerged as the key driver of regional planning in building a consensus around regional growth management, holds lessons for other regions, not other states, not other cities, regions. Regionalism is how this is being implemented. In the state of Utah, it's not even in the state of Utah. There's a region in Cache Valley, for example, that includes not just a couple of cities in Utah, but cities that reach, this region reaches over across state boundaries into Idaho. And so regionalism is key to destroying sovereignty of cities, of individuals, of counties, and of states. And so this is, they're saying everybody else, if you're trying to build regionalism, you need to follow Envision Utah's program because they've got it figured out.
They sure like we want to get our lands back from the feds, right? So
well, we'll get into that. So further on in the article, it says that how Envision Utah does this. It says that they conduct a professional survey of the local values before beginning a particular project. So just like you mentioned earlier, these things are in the pipeline before we even hear about them.
Yeah.
And so what they do is they put out a survey. They've got a program. Now, how are we going to sell it to the people? Let's do a survey and figure out how to sell this. And then the results are used to tailor the language of the public process and frame the proposals and principles so that they are widely acceptable. They lie to you. They use a sales tactic knowing that if they just come out and say what they're going to do, you're not going to go along with it.
Yeah. They collect data, they figure out what you want to hear, and then they make that happen.
Yep.
And they do whatever they want.
So in Utah, in the Utah model, it says those with a specific agenda, no growth, controlled growth, or smart growth, were not the sponsors of the project as they are in many places. So they're saying, like, in these other places, you get Greenpeace involved in this, and it's going to be, going to get a lot of opposition. It's going to be obvious what you guys are engaged in. And so they make sure and keep the organizations that are famous for being radical environmentalist, radical anti-property rights, and they keep them out of it to make sure they don't draw attention to themselves.
Yeah, unless they need to have a public compromise.
Right. Put up a boogeyman or whatever.
Right.
And so another aspect of this is they want to make sure that you're not scared. That if this is going on tomorrow, you're going to freak out. But it says that the organization never uses immediate land use controversies or public disagreements as springboards to participation in political action. The language of long-term values replaced more urgent take your medicine messages that might have turned people away. So again, it's the sales tactic. They're not going to use controversy. They're going to look these long-term values, these shared values, they'll say, to get everybody on board. Something you'll hear the establishment used over and over again is this thing, the Utah way. We're going to do this the Utah way, like with immigration reform. This is the Utah way. With stripping property owners' rights away and giving with the gay rights, the gay supremacists special rights. We're going to do that the Utah way.
Yeah, that's good.
It's genius.
I'm sold.
It's the Utah way. It's special.
Yeah, it's fine.
And so with this regional planning, they don't use things like, public lands as the springboards. They just talk about these are our common values. Everybody loves this, and we just need to move forward. And just like J. Gary Lawrence said about changing what they call themselves, the Brookings Institute explains that that's exactly what Envision Utah does. It says in many cases, it was a matter of rewording old ideas to match up with the identified values. High density housing becomes housing choice for young families and aging parents, right? So we're not going to tell you, we're going to force you into a bunch of sardine cans.
Yeah.
This is housing choice. Are you against housing choice, you monster?
We're just going to zone it so you can only live in these high-density sardine cans.
But it's housing choice, and so it's good.
So you have a choice between living in a sardine can and living in the homeless shelter sardine can.
The homeless shelter or the sardine can, because there's not enough houses for everybody.
Yeah, wow.
We're out of houses. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I can afford a house, but there's not enough of them, so I'm homeless.
Yeah, I'm homeless. Well, all these homeless people.
It's crazy.
We got to do something, like make a shelter for them to continue to be homeless in. Anyway, I digress.
So we talk about the Envision Utah, they're the obvious Agenda 21 organization. They're the ones pushing it the most obvious way. They have their programs of sustainable development. And then you've got the other side of it, the organizations that are pretending to be against this. And you'll
Lands Council.
You'll hear these things a lot, right? On Fox News, you got our connivery appearing on there, selling things in ways. He says, secure local control of Western public lands by transferring federal public lands to willing states, right? So getting our local control back. Look at the map. It's it's totally unfair.
Yeah, where's the line?
Where's
where's the line?
Where is it?
Where it's right there. That's the
because this is something that people in Utah are going to say, yeah, I'm so mad at the federal government. Look at all these horrible things that they're doing. We're going to get our lands back.
We need to get the lands out of the federal government's hands and put them into the government's hands. That's what we need.
We need to restore local control. Are you against local control?
Yeah, we need to restore it by putting it in the government's hands.
We believe states can manage the lands better at lower costs and at greater returns for taxpayers.
And our children.
And our children.
We got to throw that word
in there. For the children.
It's for the children. If you hear anyone that says, what's the word children, just assume that you need to pinch your nose and try not to sniff it. That's what
they're lying to you.
They're lying.
If it's for the children, it's a big fat hairy lie.
Yeah, big fat hairy lie.
Make the federal government
more centralized.
More. Do we need to go to a break?
Oh, we got 1 more minute.
Oh, we got 1 more minute. Okay. So we need to make the federal government keep their promise to Western states is another promise. Another thing they say, it's time for Western states to take control of federal lands within their borders, okay? This is what they sell it as, and generally speaking, restore local control. Who doesn't want local control?
Yeah.
If this is what it was about, fabulous, wonderful, awesome, but it's not. How is it not that? Fine, we're going to talk more. We're going to expose this when we get back from the break. This is Saturation Saturday, defendingutah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left. Right here on K-Talk AM 1640. This Defending Utah broadcast is brought to you in part by K-Talk Radio AM 1640, Black Lotus Web Development, blacklotuswebdev.com, the United States Constitution Made Easy to Understand by Dr. Lonnie Crockett, available at the Defending Utah Liberty Store, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, American Appliance, 801-254-2566, and Anderson Accounting, 801-225-0396. And Dr. Jeremy Thompson Dentistry with Go New Smile, gonewsmile.com, GONUSMILE.com.
Welcome back to Saturation Saturday, where we focus on right and wrong, not right and left. This is Kevin, Micah, and Ben, and we're with Defending Utah. Where did we leave off, guys?
So when we left off, we were talking about the false opposition, the people that are pretending to be about local control, right? We gotta make the federal government keep their promises.
Yeah, we gotta get the government to give the land to the government.
So when we first saw all of these bills, we're like, dude, this is awesome. Let's look at the language and see, what's going on here.
Yeah.
And look at what we found. It was crazy. So the first bill, HB 148, passed in 2012, was the Transfer of Public Lands Act, which gave the Constitutional Defense Council certain authority. And they were given a job to create a report on how to better get the federal government to give us our lands back and to propose legislation to do so.
And the plan was, give us lots of money to do nothing.
One of the things that they did actually was to significantly increase the funding for the Luray McAllister Critical Land Conservation Fund. Everybody knows about that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's one of my favorite funds. I am up to date on that fund. What's it called again?
This is how we get our land back. We increase funding for this Critical Land Conservation Fund.
Yes. Conservation.
Get our land back.
That's a buzzword.
Making it off limits to human use.
That's a bad buzzword.
So this fund, it's managed by the Utah. Well, okay, first, what does this fund do? This fund uses taxpayer dollars to not to buy land from people, but you go up to, like, say, a farmer, and you're like, hey, you see that land over there that you're not using right now? I want to give you a bunch of money for it. You own it, but you're not allowed to develop it. We're buying the development rights for it. So you still pay taxes on it, you still own it, but we control what's done on that piece of land. The farmer's like, oh, I'm not using it. Sure, give me some cash. And so through this fund, the government makes sure and makes land off limits to human use. And so that's their first plan to get the lands back.
I believe they set up a land use contract.
Right. Correct.
I believe is the more official legalese term.
And so this fund is managed by the Utah Quality Growth Commission, which was created in 1999 by a bill, HB 119, which was the Quality of Growth Act. Who could be against quality of growth, right?
Yeah, sounds quality.
So what do? They preserve open space, AKA Agenda 21.
AKA, you want this land? Can't have it. Go back to your sardine can.
Open space means it's off limits to human use.
Open space is closed to you.
Right.
Yes.
It's open. Yes. Open is closed.
Open is closed.
Peace is war.
Yeah.
Freedom is slavery.
Yeah. 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 Let's all mutter that incoherently a couple of times. Peace, war, slavery.
So who controls this, right? It says is 13 appointed, unelected officials.
Yes.
Half of which are nominated by the Utah Association of Counties and the Utah League of Cities and Towns.
It's a good number, by the way.
Which those two entities were specifically mentioned on SJR 11 in 2013 as Agenda 21 groups, and we were told not to go along with them. And they were promoting smart growth.
Are you accusing of them like lying and what they're actually up to?
So as you dig deeper, and they make this as confusing as possible, right?
For our dear listeners on the radio, we have this wonky chart.
Make sure and subscribe to the Defending Utah YouTube channel and check this video out.
And then get your reading glasses on, pause the show here, and watch and just read it for like 3 hours.
We've got the flow chart for you, the bills, the numbers, all that kind of stuff. And it's purposely confusing because they don't want you to be able to track all these different things. One bill creates a different commission that does a different thing, which funds this other thing, which gives power to something else. So that way you've got no idea what on planet Earth is going on. But the Transfer of Public Lands Act is making more land off limits to human use.
Yes. That is the too long didn't read true point of this.
So what is the effect? So it's not just one bill. We go into the actual effects of this Transfer of Public Lands Act. It, in the legislation, pre-designates wilderness areas. That means, again, just like open space is closed space, wilderness areas is Agenda 21, it's off limits to human use is what they're doing. It actually straight up calls for sustainability, one of the Agenda 21 buzzwords. It transfers Utah land to environmental groups. Isn't that, it's not even like we're going to transfer it to the state. It's actually giving a lot of it, not just to the state, but to straight up commie environmentalist psychopaths that are a part of this program to destroy property rights.
Yes, a bunch of scumbags.
Of course, do they name the names of these groups? No, it's very ambiguous, and you're supposed to just hope it's going to be your favorite fake conservative organization.
Yes.
It also creates a regional government to establish land management laws. This was passed in 2015, HB 132. So, go ahead.
This is what scares me the most. It's like, hey, we want to get our land back from the federal government. So let's create another government that nobody knows about that is actually going to manage that.
That's even less accountable. As crazy as that sounds, it's a regional government of all these appointed officials that do whatever the heck they want to, and they've got no way to be held accountable.
I'm sorry.
Are you fascinated, Michael?
A little bit of it's really late at night right now during this podcast. I'm really sorry.
I've been talking to you guys for years about this, and looking at that chart, it's still Greek to me, all the little details.
Yeah,
because there's so much going on.
It's really so much going on. It's so complicated. Ben knows a lot about it. I am a victim of that flow chart as well. But this stuff is bad. And like, are we going to talk when Trump came and gave us back land?
There's so much to this. We couldn't do it in one podcast, but there's so much going on.
The whole reason for that was to jumpstart the program of the division, the DLM. What is it called?
Division of Land Management.
Instead of the BLM, it's the Division of Land Management, which is what all this legislation crap is about, of creating a regional government over on the Western Hemisphere of the United States. Is that a term? Yeah.
A regional government for the Western states. Yeah.
Yeah. And we got that chart, that biodiversity chart.
Which is an important aspect of this, because we talked about wilderness areas. And so this is what you should understand when you're thinking of wilderness areas, of what this lands transfer bill actually does. The red area is off limits to human use. The yellow area are what's called buffer zones and highly regulated and restricted use. Now, all that green area you see right there is the normal use area.
Yeah. Now, people...
Meaning no green area.
Yeah, if you're looking at the podcast...
if you're listening to the podcast.
But if you're looking at it on YouTube...
on YouTube, gotcha.
You can't see green.
Right.
Because it hardly is there. There's like pieces here and there. But basically,
mostly in Idaho.
Yeah, mostly in Idaho.
No in Utah.
Yeah, so basically the green area is like 1 or 2% of the state. Right. Is basically what it is.
Not even that. I'd probably say like 0.5.
Maybe.
I don't know the exact numbers, but it's very minuscule. It is mostly off limits or highly restricted.
Yeah, and they have all these. So basically, they say, well, the animals need to be able to move freely about the country. And so we're going to have wildlife corridors. What that really means is they want a spider web of no humans so that animals can run rampant wherever they choose. And furthermore, even though this isn't quite explained in our chart, what they want to do is they say, well, if you have to get from one green area to another, you have to go through these wilderness areas, which means you either need a special permit, or you have to take the government transportation system through that area, or both. So it's just a total restriction of it. It's like a psychopathic fantasy is what it, when you it's just like you look at it and it's just like, this isn't even real. It just looks so.
And this map was given at the U.S. Senate. I mean, it's not like something just made up. I mean, it was something that was presented to sell this bioreserve corridor system. So going back to the wilderness areas, the American Lands Council, which is the ones promoting this lands transfer, did a video explaining what in the world's wrong with wilderness, and basically making our case why wilderness is bad, even though their bill calls for wilderness areas. And a commenter on their YouTube video says, and yet HB 148 appears to keep the wilderness designation in Utah. And so Kanivery's wife says, you're right. And that is frustrating to us. Even though Ken is the one who drafted the bill, the only reason that it's in there is because at the time, no one would sign off on the bill without that in there. So in conservative Utah, they're saying that there was nobody in the extremely conservative legislature that would pass this Lands Transfer Act without keeping land off limits to human use and in total control of the government.
Rather telling, I would think. Rather telling. Let the evidence speak for itself.
And as we continue to tout the warning voice, we've been on several different radio shows across the state explaining what's going on with this. And so, of course, the people that have a vested interest in this will come on the radio. And it was really interesting. I was on a radio show down in Cedar City and in 2015. And one of the county commissioners for Kane County called in the show and was just really mad at me. And so the radio host said, okay, you can come on tomorrow and the next day and we'll give you the floor to explain why Ben in Defending Utah is wrong. And so he comes on the show and he gives all the talking points that we've already given about how we need to make the federal government keep their promises and have local control. And he comes back and he says all that. And then the radio host says, well, that doesn't answer the question. That's what does the bill actually say about, is Ben right? And he says, well, you got to do what you can get done politically. He never said I was wrong. Just said, well, you gotta just.
What's his name?
Doug Heaton from Kane County. And so when we get back, we're going to talk about more of the things that happen. How is this building government? How is this implementing Agenda 21? More on Saturation Saturday on KTalk AM 1640 and defendingutah.org, where we think right and wrong, not right and left. I'm Ben. We got Micah and Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, I'm Kate Daly of The Kate Show on the Blaze Radio Network, as well as The Kate Daly Show on Fox News AM 1450 KZNU Daily. I have been following Defending Utah and having them on my show for the past year now. Their research is getting down to what is really happening, and it's always really impressed me. They always cite their sources, so you can trust but verify, and shouldn't we all be doing that? As a source for investigative journalism, Defending Utah covers the stories others are just too often afraid to touch. Defending Utah literally has the stories you're not going to see anywhere else. They do the digging, and boy, do they do it well. They uncover stories about what's going on in Utah that nobody else does. But I think what's really great about Defending Utah is that they're organizing to help you stand up and do something to defend liberty and to stop those that are working to enslave everybody. They actually offer solutions to help you know what to do and how to do it. These guys are fantastic. Please join me in giving your support to Defending Utah. If you really want to affect change, support good and honest journalism. Support Defending Utah.
As you have probably discerned from the name, Defending Utah, it's a locally focused Utah organization that seeks to actively promote principles that should be cherished, restored, and preserved by most Utahns. They focus on the cause of liberty and proper government because these issues truly affect every aspect of the quality of life that both we and our posterity require to be truly happy and have prosperity. Because the media, working with a complicit education system, has so confused the matters of government into a simplistic aphorism of right-wing versus left-wing and tries to compartmentalize our thinking into these supposedly political polar opposites, Defending Utah has taken as a sort of motto or slogan to think right and wrong, not right and left. When it comes to maintaining liberty and proper government, there truly is a right and wrong that are fairly simple to identify if they're properly exposed. Defending Utah tries to connect the dots between policies and behaviors that ultimately lead to outcomes that either promote or destroy liberty and proper government. They don't nibble around the edges when it comes to pointing out threats to our liberty, and they're not afraid to name names and call out organizations that subvert liberty and proper government.
Welcome back to Defending Utah's Saturation Saturday podcast, recorded not on Saturday, so you can't call in and talk to us late at night, very late at night today, but currently midnight. Just want to let you people know how much we love you and we sacrifice for you. All three of you listening to our Saturday show.
and the hundreds listening to our podcast.
Yes, that's right. And hopefully a few hundred. And this is Micah Turner and
Ben McClintock
and
Kevin Paulson.
That's right. And we are here to continue our discussion and presentation on Agenda 21 in Utah.
And if you've got questions, comments, anything you want to share with us, give us shoot us an email, info@defendingutah.org, or give us a call, leave a voicemail. I'm excited to play your voicemails.
Especially if you're angry. I love it. I love making you angry.
801-877-3205. 801-877-3205. We'll probably put like a little phone number on the screen.
There. We need like a little slider thing.
So leave a voicemail and we will play that at a future time, and we would love to hear from you. If you didn't catch that phone number, you can go to defendingutah.org and click on the contact page, and the phone number's there, as well as an email. You can do all that there at defendingutah.org. Become a member today and become part of the solution. The things that we're discussing today, we're discussing Agenda 21, and how do you get a conservative state like Utah, who is pro-property rights, pro-family, how do you get them to implement this pro-slavery agenda? And we've been talking about the false opposition. The first part of the program, we talked about the obvious, out in your face, we're just going to rip apart your property rights. And then we have the false opposition that pretends to be about local control, pretends to be about, sticking it to the feds, but you look at their bills.
Sticking it to them.
And they're big government monstrosities. And it's, we're showing some of the clips or some of the things that some of these people are saying. And stop share. And because that's the wrong, there we go. You're going to look at our Davis, California frog tunnel there.
That's right. Tunnel for frogs. Now you know what has been learned cannot be unlearned. There's a frog for tunnels. There's a tunnel for frogs in Davis, California, under a freeway or something.
I saw a hotel there too.
How's that not sharing?
You're sharing to the wrong screen.
Right there. Now share. And it's still doing that. Well, is that what's sharing over there? Okay.
I assume.
Okay. Kevin, are you seeing the wilderness areas slide?
I am seeing wilderness areas, and there's a guy there.
Okay. Yeah. So we talked about how the response was they were like saying, oh, you're just a bunch of liars. And then when they would be held down to say, well, this is what the bill says. Well, yeah, it's what the bill says, but you got to do what you can get done politically.
Yeah. Shows you the true nature and integrity of these folks.
Because clearly there's not enough solidarity in our 90% Republican House.
Of course. Solidarity.
That word.
So
clearly they have to compromise greatly to pass something.
Of course. So, in a couple of years after the original one, because this lands transfer movement, and they made it confusing. Hopefully, we've clarified the mud a little bit with some of the information, but it's more than just one bill. In 2015, another bill was passed called the Interstate Compact on the Transfer of Public Lands. So we can't just get our lands back, right? We've got to build a regional government to do so.
Yeah, we got to have more government to get rid of more government.
And fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
In the bill, it explains the purpose of it is to develop political and legal mechanisms for securing the transfer.
It's like fighting fire with like several 500-pound napalm bombs.
Nuclear weapons. We're going to put this fire out with a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
Hey, I thought gasoline works like water sometimes, right? You squirt it the right way.
Yeah. If we can just bomb it hard enough that people won't remember there was ever a fire there, then the solution has been met.
Right. So you go to this regional government bill, and it says what the purpose of it is to build a bureaucracy, to build this regional government, meaning this bill gives it, this new bureaucracy, the ability to develop political and legal mechanisms. What are legal and political mechanisms, guys?
They are government
laws, right?
Yeah,
laws.
Or there's
statutes, rules,
people telling you what to do,
and
basically
they're promoting this as restoring local control. But with this regional government, each member state has only one representative with one vote. Is that local control where out of like California, Oregon, Washington, Utah has one vote on how to decide what to do with its local lands?
Look at the upside. At least California only has one vote.
Well, not really, because they've got New Mexico. I mean, basically New Mexico, California, Oregon, and Washington are going to vote as a block.
Yeah.
And then we've got Utah, and nobody. It's not local control. Just however you look at it, it's not local control.
It's a new entity. It's an unknown. It's like, you got this DLM chairman.
It's not totally unknown because
we know these dirtbags.
Yeah, there's that, but we also know that it's against the law because it's mentioned in the Constitution that states shall not engage in these type of contracts.
Well, and that's part of the thing is it actually does have to get congressional approval. And we know that actually we have several of our congressional delegation is in the process of passing this right now.
Exciting.
So it develops, and just like with the first part of it, line 62 and 63, go down to line 176, their job is to develop uniform legislation for the member states to adopt. They come up with the bills. Now all the states in the compact have to adopt it. It also allows the Compact Commission to seek a staff and research assistance from nonprofit organizations, tax dollars. Who are these nonprofits that they're going to be hiring to tell them what to do?
It's going to be like
I have a vision. I have a vision for Envision.
Shocking.
Yeah.
So each member, an associate member state, agrees to perform and comply in accordance with the terms of the membership of the compact. So they're going to, this compact, they're saying we're promising, no matter what this group of states tell us to do, we are promising in advance. We don't know what they're going to do, but we're promising to do it. They are also, let's say the state says, wow, this stinks. Let's get out of it. Well, after they vote to get out of it, they're forced to stay in it for an additional 6 months. And this is done through Congress, of course.
Yes.
So regionalism.
So they can spend 6 months gutting your state.
Right. So one of the major arguments as well about this is, or one of the things that people don't realize. So the money it's being sold as getting a bunch of money for our schools. They're like, we're going to get this land and we're going to be able to lease it.
There's the children again.
And it's for the children.
Every time you hear the word children mentioned, it's about not helping them.
But it's not even for the children, because according to the Transfer of Public Lands Act, 95% of the proceeds go to the federal government.
It's good. That's where I want my money to go.
So we're getting our lands back, local control, and we're giving almost all of the money we get from this back to the feds. And then the other 5% goes to the schools.
It's good. All that for 5%.
Well, and it allows them to claim legitimacy. See, our state agreed to this. This is a state effort, but it's what changed.
It's about empowering the federal government. And when we started pointing this out, it was hilarious. One of Ken's major funders brought this to his attention. And before he had time to really come up with a good excuse, the first thing off the top of his head was, oh, this is fabulous because it's a great way to work towards paying off the national debt.
Yeah. And anyone who has any optimism for paying off the national debt has absolutely no idea how it works, or they are totally lying to you. Those are the only two. There are no other options. I don't like to say that there are only two options. It's not very often, but this is one of them. Those are the only options, because you can't pay off the debt.
And he realized how stupid it was to say that. And so their new argument is, it's a part of our responsibility to the federal government under the Enabling Act, okay? So he's saying that with our Enabling Act, and if you don't know what the Enabling Act is,
yes,
unfortunately
I do.
That's the act that brings a state into the union.
Yeah.
And so he's claiming that in the Enabling Act, 95% of the proceeds of our public lands, quote unquote, has to go to the federal government.
Now, I remember looking for some of the Enabling Act legislation a few years ago, and according to what I could find, apparently most of it has disappeared, the Utah Enabling Act.
What do you mean?
Like, I couldn't find all of it in one piece.
We've done the research and we found the entire Enabling Act.
You did find it?
We did find it.
Okay. I mean,
so
somebody's found it, and it wasn't me, but at least it was us.
One of the inconvenient facts about this excuse is the Enabling Act itself. Guess what? It doesn't say that we have to give 95% of the proceeds to the federal government. The only thing that it says is that we have to give 5% of it to schools. And so this idea that we have to give almost 100% of it to the feds is a complete lie.
Well, all of it's a lie, because the state is a state and can do whatever it wants.
And that's exactly the next point. Is I want to give you an example of this. The Enabling Act is just what allows you to become a state. Once you're a state, it is no longer binding upon you. The state of Arizona, when they were working to become a state, in their proposed state constitution, they had a provision to have what's called the initiative process. And the federal government said, no, you can't do that. It's unconstitutional because we have to ensure every state has a Republican form of government, and that makes you too much of like a democracy. So you have to take that out. So Arizona took that part out of their constitution, and they were allowed to become a state. And immediately after becoming a state, they put it right back in.
Yeah.
So it's irrelevant. It's not in there, and even if it was, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so he just can't come up with an honest answer. The national debt or the Enabling Act. Both of those garbage, baloney, chutzpah.
Yeah, it's almost like Ken Ivory totally sucks.
Ken Ivory.
Sorry, my bad. I didn't pronounce his name appropriately. I will work on that. I take full responsibility.
So they put all these different bills together, and it doesn't have to be that difficult. What is the solution? We're going to talk about what the solution is when we get back from the break to our final segment.
Yes, I do believe so.
And explain to you the rest and what we can do about this and actually restore local control once and for all. This is Saturation Saturday. We're saturating you with the truth from defendingutah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left. I'm Ben McClintock, Micah Turner, Kevin Paulson, and we'll be right back after this break on K-Talk AM 1640.
This Defending Utah broadcast is brought to you in part by K-Talk Radio AM 1640, Black Lotus Web Development, blacklotuswebdev.com, the United States Constitution Made Easy to Understand by Dr. Lonnie Crockett, available at the Defending Utah Liberty Store, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, American Appliance, 801-254-2566, and Anderson Accounting, 801-225-0396. And Dr. Jeremy Thompson Dentistry with Go New Smile, gonewsmile.com, GONUSMILE.com.
Hey, welcome back to Saturation Saturday with Ben, Micah, and Kevin. We are glad to be with you today, and we've been talking about Agenda 21 and its implementation in Utah. And if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, give us a call at 801-877-3205 and leave a voicemail. And we will play that voicemail in a future program, respond to you, answer your question, or just have a good laugh together.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Or you can leave us a voicemail at info.
An angry voicemail.
Info at defendingutah.org. And we've been talking about how this Transfer of Public Lands Act actually implements Agenda 21 and how it's a complete false opposition against what the federal government is doing. And talking about, what is actually in the bill language, what are their excuses when they come up with these things, and also now what do we do about it? What should be done? If you don't think that we should give the state more power, then what should we do? It's actually pretty simple when you think about it. It doesn't have to be a whole lot of lines. The Constitution doesn't give the federal government the power to do this. Therefore, we take our land back.
End of discussion.
And it goes back to private people because statism, communism, socialism, fascism is the government control of land, whereas freedom
is the opposite
of that.
The government isn't supposed to own this land. It doesn't have any authority to just own.
Not just not supposed to, it's illegal. It's specifically illegal for them to do so.
Yes, it's specifically non-enumerated in the Constitution to just own tons of land because reasons.
And
the only place in the Constitution where it's mentioned where the government may own land is in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, where it specifies for docks and ports, military use, and other needful.
In pursuant of the enumerated powers, not just needful isn't like a generic term to be able to do whatever we want.
But it does say other needful buildings.
Right.
But Micah, I want to trespass over the entire state in my side-by-side. I want to be able to drive everywhere.
Yeah.
This is the comment I always get from from friends when I say, "Oh, I want more private property." Oh, well, then there'll be fences, and I can't just go wherever I want to.
Oh, you mean like now with wilderness areas?
Yeah, that's.
I've got wetlands.
You know, my Jeep. I've gone many times into the wilderness areas, and I don't think I've ever been anywhere that there's not fences. There's always fences.
BLM land is famous for fences.
They are. BLM is like the fencing masters. They have fences where you wouldn't even believe that someone would
like, how did they get here to build this fence?
Yeah, I've seen fences that are going up like rock walls. Like the BLM is a fence master.
It's almost like they have unlimited funding.
Almost like it's like they're just money out of nothing. Weird. And then they're using it to build fences. It's ridiculous. It is crazy.
Well, it's great.
Is that fence? The Democrats are, you know, this isn't right and left, but we hear the Congress is this discussion of you can't build fences, but it's funny that we have these big government people that are against a border wall are in favor of these fences to keep the people out.
Yes,
of this land.
They are. The fences are everywhere.
Well, it's interesting how if you're a property owner, if you don't pay your taxes, they repo your property and give it to the government. And then, but if you're the government, you can just point a gun at the citizenry and pay for anything you want to.
Right.
These fences or whatever other buildings or improvements you want to make to the land. And it's in the name of preserving it. So I don't know.
Or the children.
That's right.
I do have a hard time breaking through people through their minds when it comes to what would it be like if it were more private. And but you know, imagine this. Like if you ever, there are a lot of hunters in Utah. They wanna be able to go hunt where they want to hunt. They get their permission slips from the government to hunt certain things at certain times a year in a little tiny window that the government gives you. And if you're lucky enough to draw a tag to hunt this certain animal in this certain place at this certain time, and if you're unlucky enough to go fishing, you know, 20 feet out of the border and catch the wrong kind of fish at the wrong time, you can go to jail for that, of course, you know.
Right.
I actually have a friend who was imprisoned for shooting a deer and then pursuing it onto one of their bad areas that you weren't supposed to collect the deer, but he shot it in the right place. It wandered off while it was dying into the wrong place, and the ranger was watching him the whole time. It's like this little game, right? And he's following him down oh, you picked up the deer in the wrong place, you're going to jail. I think he spent 4 years in jail.
Crazy.
Lost everything. I mean, this is the kind of, so that's freedom. I mean, that's what you want. You want that kind of treatment. I mean, it's the king's deer. You get to use this property, but we get to tell you how. And
we're going to entrap you. We're going to say, oh, you did the right thing, but because you made sure that the deer didn't suffer, you know, now you're going to jail for 4 years.
Yeah, I would much rather go negotiate with a farmer or a rancher that's got thousands of acres and say, hey, you know, I'd like to go hunt on your land. Okay, sign here, pay me $20. Off you go. Any time of year, any kind of animal, whatever lives there, you can hunt. You know, and the market, it's funny because people think, oh, if the market controls it, we're gonna be done. We won't have any more of these resources. We'll destroy them. Well, the opposite is true. I mean, if anybody knows the history of the saving of the rhinos and the elephants in Africa, it was private hunting preserves that saved them.
Well, and big government's the worst offender of these things. You look at China and the Soviet Union; those are like,
you don't even have to look at them. Last year there was in Nevada that desert tortoise shelter that had like 10 tortoises.
Mm-hmm.
They ran out of funding. I'm not sure how, but they ran out of funding. Instead of releasing the tortoises back into the wild, they euthanized them.
They killed them. Or
I'm not even exaggerating.
Or when
this happened last year.
When the EPA let all of that the toxic waste go into the rivers in Colorado a couple years ago.
Oh yeah.
Well, just look at MTBE with that one.
Yeah,
I mean, that was an additive for gasoline.
That one was even worse though, because they did that on purpose,
right?
So that they could then say that there was ecological emergency. They got emergency funding, created a whole new bureau, basically claimed that section of the river, and then controlled it. So they basically made another wildlife preserve.
They created emergency to be able to give themselves more power.
Amazing. No one would ever suspect that.
And so there are lots of examples of, how do we do this? A few years ago, there was a bunch of ranchers in several western states that got together to declare their independence from the BLM. They did their petition for redress of grievances. They got together with solidarity of other ranchers throughout the West to be able to be standing together and be strong. And they withdrew their consent. They declared independence from the BLM, and they restored the rule of law, because the Constitution says that the BLM doesn't have the authority to do this. And so they restored their rights as property owners. And actually, there was a presentation at this event where Dr. Angus McIntosh explained how the Forest Service and the BLM lies to ranchers, making them think that they have to sign these contracts when they don't have to. They basically sign their rights away. And so because they have what's called split estate, where these aren't welfare ranchers, they own that portion of the land. They own the grazing rights. It's an actual ownership. And that's what split estate in the West is all about. And that's an important thing that a lot of city people don't understand about split estates. We think, we own the land from the center of the earth up to, the outer space on this little square piece of land. But that's not how it works.
You can't fly above my house.
It's split estate. There's different things. You can, on the same square plot of land, you've got one guy that has water rights. You got another guy that has mineral rights. You got another guy that has grazing rights. They own it. They didn't rent it from anybody. They bought those rights. And so these ranchers are restoring their rights. And what I have found really interesting is when they haven't done this recently because they know that they can't, but Connivery and all of the people promoting the Transfer of Public Lands Act, throughout the past in 2013 and 2015, they said that they were going to explain why we were wrong. Over and over again, they said, you're wrong. And I said, okay, great. Show us where we're wrong. Show us where what we said was in the bill isn't in the bill. It's now 2018, 5 years since the first promised rebuttal, and not a single word. We only have gotten, when they're pressed, you're right, but you got to do what you can do politically.
Which means they're liars.
And then it was interesting, just a little bit late in 2015, and so this is in July of 2015 was these responses. And then in September of 2015, we got a response of an author of a book called Statehood, which was the basis of the first Transfer of Public Lands Act. And in his email, he said, well, you're wrong, because this isn't a regional government, because this legislation has no police power, it's got no power of taxation, and it's absent from any form of coercive power, and it can in no way be considered a government of any kind.
I think it does all of those things. Last time I read it.
Well, just like we've shown you, it does all of those things, of course. Yeah. But to kick it up a notch, the following year, it's like almost like they have these things waiting in the wings for us.
Yes, yes.
There was HB 217, and that was the Public Land Management Act.
Or 276.
I'm sorry, 276.
I guess it doesn't really matter because that's not its number anymore, right?
Because they amended it and made it even worse.
Yeah.
And what the Utah Public Land Management Act did was it creates a new division of land management. Instead of a BLM, a DLM. So it creates a whole new government bureaucracy. Woohoo!
Yes, line 41 and 42.
And except as in provided in subsections 4, B, and C, the local county sheriff is the primary law enforcement authority with jurisdiction on public land. Okay, oh, wow, that's great, right? The sheriff is the primary law enforcement. Wait a second. There's that key word there, except.
Yes, except. They are sneaky with that.
So when is the sheriff not the primary law enforcement authority? So according to this bill, the director of the DLM may employ and utilize within the DLM certified peace officers that, if and when deployed, will be the primary law enforcement authority with jurisdiction on public land. Okay, so that's one exception. So the sheriff is not the primary law enforcement officer when the DLM sends out his officers.
The unelected
bureaucrat.
Illegal bureaucracy.
So that's B. So now what's C? Conservation officers deployed by the Division of Wildlife are the primary law enforcement authority with jurisdiction on public land to enforce the laws and regulations under the Wildlife Resource Code. So, except for always,
yes,
the sheriff's the primary law enforcement. So, meaning the sheriff is never the primary law enforcement. And so,
yeah, I remember Mike Noel was talking on the radio about how, it was already like this. We just had to write these lines in to make it congruent with the existing federal laws. But the bad thing about this is we know that the sheriff is the primary, he has the authority to tell these guys to take a hike. But then once we pass a bill in our state that says this is how it is, then it gives legitimacy to this usurpation.
Right.
Yeah. Even though the legislature doesn't have the authority to take any powers away from the sheriff.
Right.
The sheriff has executive powers that are born straight from his constituents. So
he's getting his power directly from the people.
Yes. So any infringement upon that authority would be an illegal usurpation.
Right. So you look further, as bad as that is, this is our last segment.
Yeah, so we'll have to continue this on the podcast.
So on the podcast, this is great. We're encouraging you to subscribe to the Defending Utah podcast. You can catch the rest of this, and what's even worse than what we've already talked about coming up in the podcast. So go check out the podcast.
Oh, wait, there's more.
Either podcast, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, or the video podcast Defending Utah on YouTube. And this has been Saturation Saturday on K-Talk AM 1630 with Ben, Micah, and Kevin. We will see you next Saturday. So now we continue on.
So now the time doesn't matter.
Now the time doesn't matter. We will finish this. So everybody on the podcast, on the video and audio podcast, what could be worse than taking away the power of the sheriff? Okay, we talked about the policing powers, right? Is what he says. Why this isn't government. So you go back to the Public Lands Management Act, continue further on into it. It actually merges the judge, jury, and executioner into a single elected bureaucrat. Police, the policing powers, the legislative powers, and the judiciary powers all into one person. Okay, and it takes ownership and control of all the lands that are turned over from the feds to the state of Utah. So now this DLM owns and controls the land. That's what really matters. It creates all the regulations pertaining to use. So no, your legislator, local control baloney, your county, even your state legislator is not creating the regulations. It's this unelected bureaucrat that is writing the laws for this land. He can tax the land and your use of the land. He creates an independent police agency to enforce the laws that he wrote. And then if they catch you breaking one of their make-up laws, now their own internal court system is what prosecutes.
Now, Ben, isn't there also a line in this bill about every transaction of land that's more than a certain size or a certain price tag that they get to basically approve or deny the opportunity for the sale?
They have power over any land transfer over 200 acres.
Yeah, that's not very big.
No. And so what we've really done here is we've created an all-powerful land czar. So in reaction, this is the police power. This is coercive power. This is a regional government. And when we expose this, the political insiders in the state of Utah went crazy. And there was so many people calling the state legislature and the governor that they held an emergency meeting at the Capitol. And we've got Mike Noel in the second one from the right. Starting from the right, the second one in is Mike Noel. You have two other legislators, Kevin Stratton, and then the guy on the far left, I think, was either the host of the program. And then Mark Ward is the second one in from the left. And when people were explaining why this was a problem, showing what we were showing, just showing you, he was not happy about this idea that we would be so uppity.
No, he was not.
Let's listen to what he had to say.
But when I hear rhetoric like this that implies the state can't be trusted either, I'm sorry. We have to plant our faith in the state of Utah. Yes, sir, there has to be a DLM. If there's no DLM, if there's no management structure, what do you have? You have chaos. You have anarchy. You have the absence of law, which is the most un-American thing there is.
So if you're in favor of private control of property, you're anti-American, anarchist, in favor of chaos. And I think it's his use of the phrase, you have to plant your faith
in the state.
Are you saying that statism is a religion? Is that what you're implying, Ben?
If you don't worship at the altar of the state, you are a blasphemer, and you are deserving of the most heinous punishment imaginable, un-American. Basically, you're treasonous if you don't worship at the altar of the state.
What does the altar of the state look like?
You have to go and pay your tribute at whichever government office building they tell you to pay tribute to.
Is there lots of orphan blood at it? I bet there is.
Crazy. I mean, that's the most extreme thing I've heard, and I've heard a lot. But equating it to religion.
Yeah,
put your faith in the state, man.
And
it will take care of you, cradle to grave.
We believe in property rights. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and the founding fathers weren't about private property, and they weren't about planting their faith in the state. But I seem to remember that's like what America was founded upon, was not putting your faith in the state.
That's kind of what I remember.
That's what I remember.
You know, these truths are self-evident that all men are endowed by God with certain individual liberties,
and that governments are endowed by God to own property. Is that what the Declaration of Independence said? Oh
no, I think
don't want your chaos.
Exactly the opposite.
No. It says that all men are obligated to obey the government, and that. No.
You guys are just a bunch of anarchists.
Your rights come from God, and the government's job is to protect those rights.
Oh yes, that sounds right. That now that you mentioned it, that's the part that I think you're onto something, Ben. I think you're onto something indeed.
Mark's insane. I mean, that's like idolatry at its most blatant.
Yep.
So let's go back to sharing our screen on the video podcast. So it's really interesting. Ken Ivory, he posted something on social media when he was being attacked that I agree with. I was like, wow, I agree with something that Ken Ivory said. He said that in politics, what do people and groups do when they are losing in the merits? Slanderous personal attacks, smear and fear. It's the oldest trick in the political book. Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when we exposed his legislation, this is what he said to us. Looks like you're coordinating with George Soros to keep the land in federal control. Is that smear and fear? Personal attacks?
Hey, Micah, I do recall you making a T-shirt with a George Soros jetpack on it.
Yes. This was in response to his claiming that we're in coordinating with George Soros. And that's, he doesn't say this is where you're wrong. He just says, oh, you're crazy.
We do need to issue special edition George Soros jetpack T-shirts.
We do.
So far, there's only one in existence, and it's mine.
Hey, I have one.
Oh, that's right. We put the tuxedo on the front of yours.
That's right. Yeah.
You're the tuxedo jetpackers.
Yeah,
so there's 2 tuxedo in the world.
If you're interested in this exclusive George Soros jetpack,
Yes.
email us at info@defendingutah.org.
Be kind of expensive, like $30 for a shirt.
No, this will be a third of a kind. We're going to number them all.
Right. So it's $60 for a shirt.
So what was the other smear and fear personal attack? Where are you funded, and who are you working for that you are in such a line with George Soros and his attack machine?
I think that we're funded by your organization, Ken Ivory.
And then we've got Darren Bushman, the Paiute County Commissioner, who says, "Are you kidding me? This is the biggest piece of trash ever written. I have never seen anything so obviously bull bleep in a very long time. Are you taking your info directly from the Montana Wilderness Society or George Soros?" I'm sensing a pattern here.
You know, I think he's like, "Are you kidding me? This is the biggest piece of trash ever." No, he's probably did it like you said.
And it just got to resort to swearing.
Yeah.
So, we're right. They're losing on the merits. We focused on the merits.
This is the biggest piece of trash ever. Quoting directly from our legislation.
How dare you?
How dare you? Not even needing to interpret it because it says exactly what it says quite obviously.
That they're the ones that are in alignment with the Montana Wilderness Society and George Soros.
Yes, whoever they are.
They're the Agenda 21 groups. So, and this is
But why bring up the Montana Wilderness Society?
Because
it's so random.
It's essential that this is a common tactic, is to accuse your enemies of what you yourself are doing.
It's called gaslighting.
Why the Montana? Nobody in Utah knows about the Montana Wilderness Society.
George. Everybody knows about George Soros. So.
Everyone knows about George Soros. Sure, I get that one, but like the Montana Wilderness Society.
So
I think Glenn Beck made George Soros famous.
He did. It's the boogeyman, and sure, George Soros is a bad guy, but he's pretty low on the total.
He's the official designated boogeyman, I think.
He's the official.
I think he signed up for that. I want to be the boogeyman.
He looks like it.
He does look like him, and
he looks like a
Rockefeller both look like a bunch of Satanists.
Have you seen old Rockefeller Sr.? I mean, he doesn't have a face. Have you seen pictures of him?
Man.
His nose is just a little crooked, and he's super skinny and just flat. He doesn't have a face.
Well, is that you're talking about the one that just died?
No, not the one that just died.
His dad.
Yeah, his dad.
You're talking John D?
So I've seen John D that just died, and that dude.
I mean, he looks evil.
He looks like Satan.
But his lineage, he comes from a man with no face.
The only reason he has a face is because of his mother.
Yes, that's the only reason why he has a face. And his mother must be a pretty evil-looking woman, I think. I haven't seen her.
Who is it that has the song? Not David Bowie. What's the name of the? Billy Idol has a song called "Eyes Without a Face."
I haven't heard that one. I think White Wedding.
It's a good song.
That I know.
I don't know.
But so since they've gone, we've focused directly on the bills. We have directly focused on the merits. Now, people will say, well, Ken Ivory, he's the most conservative guy in the legislature. Why are you guys going after him? You guys should be going after Jim DeBackery and people like him.
Yeah.
Well, no, because they're openly socialist. We need to go after the wolves in sheep's clothing. Now, is Ken Ivory really? Because every talk he gives, he mentions founding father and Constitution. Well, let's look at his record, because that's going to show us everything we need to know. It's not just us that's saying he's liberal, right? You got the American Conservative Union, D+, we got Libertas, Ds and Fs, Utah Grassroots, Fs. This guy is a liberal. This guy's a big government hack. He voted for a bill that gave federal government more power and the ability to take away due process. He killed Obamacare nullification, making sure that Obamacare got nullified. He wrote bills that made us in line with Obamacare. He voted to raise the gas tax. He voted to raise the property tax. And then even worse than Ken Ivory's record is Mike Noel's. Straight across Fs. On the Kate Daly show, defending his horrible bill, He says, I obey the Constitution as much as anyone up at the Capitol.
Which is basically the worst offense one could ever come up with under such an accusation. I don't know what the accusation was, but I think we know what the accusation was. Hilarious. Yes. That's pure comedy. You're right. That is good comedy. That should... This show writes itself.
Oh my gosh. I kill as many people as Jeffrey Dahmer. Sorry. No. Not really a defense. He created special courts for veterans. He that involved, of course, funding from the feds. He voted for taking away property rights. He supported the online taxes. He supported, of course, the gas and property tax. So one of the arguments that we'll get a lot is, it's got some stuff that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it's moving us in the right direction, right? We got here slowly, and we just got to, slowly move our way back. And this is just moving us in the right direction. And so
sometimes to save capitalism, you've got to be socialist.
You've got to destroy capitalism, right?
Wasn't that Bush?
So what's interesting about this is, if that's true, let's look at the original. We talked about the original Transfer of Public Lands Act, but after that was passed, they continued on their path of destruction with the Interstate Compact, right?
Color me surprised.
They didn't have to do that. That was done.
Yeah.
We already had the Transfer of Public Lands Act. We didn't have to create regional government. We didn't have to create the Wilderness Act, which made more land off limits to human use, but they did it anyways. They didn't have to increase funding for the Lorraine McAllister Critical Land Conservation Fund. In fact, we called them and we asked them about their funding, and they said, oh yeah, we haven't gotten funding until after this went down.
Oh yeah.
We didn't have to have the Utah Public Land Management Act, but they did it anyways. In fact, we've spent over now $12 million in taxpayer to fund consultants to figure out what we're going to do.
And who are these consultants? Among them is Ken Ivory.
Yep. And $4.5 million in lawyers for a non-existent lawsuit.
Wait, what was that one?
No, they're getting ready for a lawsuit.
This is all about how to get their lands back. We're going to sue the government. So they said, they've spent $4.5 million on lawyers, and the legislature's like, oh, no. It'll never, if we lose in court under Obama, it'll set us back 100 years. So we're going to wait until we get a Republican in there, and then we'll sue, because then we'll get our lands back. And then when Trump becomes president, he's, oh no, we don't need to sue anymore because we're working with the system. We're going to get the legislature to do it, the Congress to do this for us. So they didn't have to raise this money, but they did. They spent all this money for a lawsuit that they promised that never happened.
So they didn't even do the lawsuit.
Nope. And will never happen. They have no intention of doing it.
Not that the lawsuit would be useful.
Right. You don't need to.
They're just throwing money at their friends.
Yes. Almost $20 million on this thing. This is a big money-making scheme. So we've talked about the pincer strategy and how you get these things done. Now, is that true? Did we have people on the pro-Agenda 21 side pretending to be a part of getting our lands back from the federal government? Well, let's look at, we talked about the constitutional defense, part of the original Transfer of Public Lands Act was the Commission for the Stewardship of Public Lands, okay? So they were given the job of, this is a group of legislators that were given the job of coming up with ways to get our lands back from the federal government. Now, this is a quote-unquote bipartisan commission, and on the commission, we have over half of the commission is members of Envision Utah. I mean, a third of the commission are members of Envision Utah, the openly pro-Agenda 21 organization has people that are a part of the commission that is supposed to get our lands back. So
I think it's going to work well.
This is going to, there's no conflict of interest there.
No. No.
And then we talked about, the Constitutional Defense Council, which wrote the document that said we need to give money to the Lorraine McAllister Conservation Fund, buying up private property to make off limits to human use. Now let's look at that. Now we've got, of course, the Utah Public Lands Commission. We've got Gary Herbert, Spencer Eccles. We've got Alan Matheson, who's the state planning coordinator, the former state Senate president, Wayne Niederhauser, the deputy commissioner of the Utah Department of Agriculture, and one of the former Utah County commissioners on Envision Utah. So we've got all of these people that are a part of Envision Utah and part of implementing Agenda 21 that are supposedly a part of an organization that is trying to, quote unquote, get our lands back and return local control. It's a lie.
Plain and simple.
But it's called the Constitutional Defense Council. What are you talking about?
Well, it's not plain and simple. It's plain and complicated.
And they've made it as, hopefully we've shown you with the language, with the connections and their actions that have made it a little bit clear to understand what's really going on here. That this is an attack on our rights of private property. This is an attack on our families. This is actually a program to implement not only an anti-Utah agenda, but an anti-American agenda, part of implementing an international world government, world tyranny agenda right here by our own elected officials.
Let's unelect them.
Yes, it sucks. It's totally against the law. It violates sovereignty. It violates natural law. It's abominable. It is the great church
of the devil.
Yes.
And they even say it themselves, because we've got to plant our faith in them. Otherwise, we're the un-American ones if we don't trust the government.
I, Micah Lloyd Turner, will never plant my faith in them. Not for one day, not for 1 minute.
And you can freely call me un-American for doing so.
So which of Bastia's 3 types of government would this be? The few plunder the many, everybody plunders everybody, or nobody plunders anybody?
This is the few plundering the many.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
And so we had to tell you this because most people don't understand. We are literally the only organization that has gone through and shown you what's really going on. And so that you can actually not fall for these fake things. People are spending their hard-earned money. People are spending their extra time, away from their family, volunteering for this stuff and doing the exact opposite that they think it is. So you have to first understand what's going on, and so you can stop supporting things that you don't really support. And then we can start actually working on the solution to actually restore liberty as opposed to these false oppositions. And so, and why haven't you heard what we've said from anybody else? Why isn't KSL? Why isn't Channel 2? Why isn't any other network covering this? Why isn't Ron Arquette talking about this? In fact, we had lots of people wanting to, but because he's a part of another organization, likes what Ken Ivory's doing, of course, he is not going to give us the time of day. And so you're only going to hear about this through Defending Utah, exposing Agenda 21 in Utah. And so we hope that you will become a part of the solution, that you will join as a member of Defending Utah and take part of the all the benefits that membership offers and supporting the only organization that's actually digging and doing the work to find out what's really going on.
Sorry, it's like I'm really tired.
It's late.
It's late.
So
I'm becoming less animated.
Let's.
I'm glad you are full of fire.
Oh, I'm full of it.
I know
I'm full of something.
You're full of fire right now. I'm bleeding it.
So, you guys, let's wrap it up. Do you guys have anything else you want to share, or kind of wrap? Any other final things you guys have to share about this?
How much government would we have to control to reverse all of these bad laws?
Not a whole lot. If we've done this in other states where if we just have one legislator that is actually willing to introduce, because you get these false excuses from legislators like, oh, I don't want to introduce that because it's not going to pass. Well, if you introduce it, we hold them accountable, and you show it puts people on the defensive saying, oh, I need to defend liberty. And so we just need one legislator that would act. That is a lot of times enough. But a guaranteed amount, veto-proof majority would be if we had about 70 members in both houses combined. We could overturn a veto. Like we get a bill passed, because a lot of times they'll do this. We're like, oh, the governor's going to veto it. We can vote on this and make ourselves look good and say, oh, that dang governor. But if we get a veto-proof majority, then whatever the governor does, we can just tell him to pound sand and actually enact liberty in the state.
Too bad. Got to do it anyway.
Yep. So
snuff it.
With that, this is the exclusive podcast edition of the Defending Utah Saturation Saturday production, and we've been talking about Agenda 21. And make sure and subscribe to either our Defending Utah YouTube channel to make sure and get notifications for all of our future podcasts, or your favorite podcast venue of iTunes, iHeartRadio, or Spreaker.
Yes.
Till next time, I'm Ben.
Micah.
Kevin. And defendingutah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
Defending Utah Radio, a true grassroots group for liberty. We don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. To find out how you can become a member, visit defendingutah.org.